Den norske Nobelkomiteen har bestemt at Nobels fredspris for 2006 skal deles mellom Yunus og Grameen Bank for arbeidet deres for å skape økonomisk og sosial utvikling nedenifra. There's one quotation, and that is from one of the borrowers. She said, "My mother gave me birth. Yunus gave me a life."
I do think that we need to give Mohammed Yunus credit for spreading the idea that you can do business with the poor. They're not just objects of charity.
35 years ago, Mohammed Yunus founded Grameen Bank, a bank that has dispersed over $8 billion, lifting millions of people from poverty with microloans.
This idea, which began in Jobra, has spread around the world. There are now Grameen-type programs in almost every country in the world.
Bill and Hillary Clinton got on the bandwagon. Kings and queens got on the bandwagon. Bono got on the bandwagon. All these big names, Hollywood stars, left and right, all said, this is wonderful, this is great. And Dr. Mohammed Yunus wins the Nobel Peace Prize for this. How can it be bad? It must be good.
More than 1 billion of the world's population are living in poverty and separated from the global markets. So why not give the poor loans so that they can start small businesses and improve their lives with so-called microloans? This simple idea and the man behind it have been hailed as a triumph for decades. But can a loan of, say, $120 really make a difference? Really help poor families out of poverty? A small village in Bangladesh called Jobra generated the very first apparent success stories in the history of microloans. It was in this village then that Mohammed Yunus's successful Grameen Bank first began. In 1976, the young economist Mohammed Yunus lent $27 in total to 42 women in Jobra to help them kickstart a business.
If I could make so many people so happy with such a tiny amount of money, why shouldn't I do more of it? We became a bank, call it Grameen Bank or Village Bank. Today that bank is a big bank. It's a nationwide bank in Bangladesh. We have nearly 8.5 million borrowers in that bank.
By the mid-90s, the world had learnt about the success stories of the microloans in Bangladesh. This little village came to symbolize this success. The former First Lady of the United States, Hillary Clinton, pictured here on tour in the company of the proud Mohammed Yunus.
Word about what you have achieved traveled all the way to the United States.
Ex-President Bill Clinton is also an enthusiastic supporter. Year after year, since 2001, he has suggested Mohammed Yunus would be a worthy recipient of the Nobel Prize. In the course of Hillary Clinton's visit, numerous families in the village were offered microloans to enable them to build houses. Since then, the village has been nicknamed Hillary Village. "13 years after the First Lady's visit, we have gone to see the effects of the proclaimed economical boost.
Can I see? Hillary.
To some of the villagers, the small microloans have been very useful.
যে কিছুই তো ছিল না, এখন এই কিস্তির টাকা শোধ করে দিয়ে বাড়ি ঘরদর করেছি, ইচ্ছা মতো ছেলে মেয়ে বিয়ে দিয়েছি, তারপরে ভালো পড়া যায়, ভালো পড়াই সব কিছুই করা যায়, তাতে আমার কষ্ট হয় না। তারপরে আবার টুকটাক করে তুলে ছাগল গরু পালি আমি, ছাগল আছে, গরু আছে, টাকা গোছাইয়ে অনেকগুলো গরু হইলো, সেই গরুগুলো বেচে আমার বড় মেয়ে বিয়ে দিলাম।
Were you the only one who took a loan?
অনেক লোকে নিয়েছে, আমরা ওই সময় সদস্য ছিলাম 60-70 জন।
In Paris, we meet a development researcher with decades of experience in poverty reduction, including work for the World Bank and the United Nations.
It almost has an irresistible magic to it. And the magic goes like this. You give a little money to a poor person. The poor person invests. He and she make money, and they pay the money back. What could be better than that? A low-cost, if not no-cost investment, and boom, poverty is solved.
In New York, we meet an economist who has investigated what access to money can mean for poor people.
The great hope for microfinance was that this very focused intervention could reach massive scale worldwide and take millions out of poverty. The ideas are very, very powerful.
In Jobra, where it all started, we meet the daughter of Sofia Begum. Her mother was one of the very first loan takers of Mohammed Yunus.
ইউনুস সাহেবের সাথে দেখা হইছে আপনার?
তেবাগার হামালত দেখা হই আর ফুলুত্তরা দিলাম ইয়ো গরম মাইসি সাদা তুলিয়ে ফুলুত্তরাইবে দিয়ে দে আর রাতা না।
কি কথা হইছিল তখন?
গর্ব দেব বলে হইল সুবিয়া হাতুরা মাইফাল
বুঝছিল
আর লগে ইয়া হতা হইল আজ এতুন তো আর মা মরে গেছে সুবিয়া হাতু যখন মজ্জা আর মাইফা এলে হই দেরি।
In Jobra, the fate of Mrs. Begum was not seen as a success. According to the local media, Sofia Begum died in deep poverty in 1998. During the interview with the daughter, a neighbor suddenly interferes.
বড় একটা ফুটা আনছি এটা বান্ধা মানে অনেক টাকা করেছি অনেক কিছু করেছি
আপনাদের সাথে প্রতারণা হয়েছে
প্রতারণা আজ একবার না 3 বছর হইতে
Back in Hillary Village, we meet Kartik and his family.
তো দেখছি না আমাদের কোনো সাহায্য করেনি হিলারি আমাদের ঘর দেওয়ার কথা ছিল সবার 60টা ঘর সবাইকে ঘর দেওয়ার কথা ছিল 5-6টা ঘর দিয়েছে আর কোনো সাহায্য আমাদের করি নাই হিলারি ক্লিনটন
Members of this family tell us that they got a mortgage and still have a loan from Grameen Bank. Today, Kuda and his family owe about $70 to the bank.
না আপনারা যা করছেন আমার সাথে কথা আমি এমনি বসে কাজ করি ওই টিয়াপারে নিলাম তাই ওই তুলে নিয়ে গেল ওই সেখানে আসে
A few days after Hillary Clinton's tour, the villagers got a new American visitor. Development researcher Jude Fernando had heard about her visit.
I was very curious as to why that this particular person was, the whole Hillary Clinton was brought in. So I went and interviewed lots of women. They say that, microfinance was not very popular before she came in, and most of the women who spoke during Hillary Clinton's visit were not from the village. And most of the women were taken by buses from outside. Obviously, they knew what exactly to say. So I think for me it was a PR thing.
অনেকে একসাথে বাড়িঘর করার জন্য লোন পাইছিলেন, কয়জন বাড়িঘর করতে পারছিলেন আর কয়জনের এখন পর্যন্ত বাড়িঘর আছে যে বাড়িঘর করা হয়েছে?
ওই সময় ঘর করা হয়েছে 3 জনে, এই ঘরটা আর এই বেড়ার ঘরটা আর ওই মুড়োর ঘরটা আর এই ঘরটা আর এই ঘরটা।
এই যে গ্রামে অনেকে লোন নিচ্ছে, কি মনে হয় তাদের লোন নিয়ে ভালো হচ্ছে?
ভালো হওয়ার মধ্যে দেখতেছি এই একটা ফুলাঘাটটা, ওই একটা আরও কত বেড়ার ঘর, ওই একটা, আর কেউ আর ভালো কই আর ভালো নেই।
কতজন লোন নিচ্ছে গ্রামে?
তা ধরো 50, 40, 80 জন না।
আপনি তো দেখতেছেন চারপাশে আপনার পাড়া প্রতিবেশী যারা,
ওই 4-5 ঘর উন্নতি হয়েছে, আর সব তো উন্নতি করতে পারিনি।
সেই 60 ঘরের অবস্থা কি? বাকিদের অবস্থা কি?
বাকিদের অবস্থা তো কেউ ঘর বাড়ি বেচেও ফেলেছে, বিক্রি হয়ে গেছে, কারোর উন্নতি কেউ করতে পারছে, কেউ পারি নাই, এই মতোই চলছে।
আমাদের বাড়িটা নষ্ট হইলো ছিল অনেক, আমার অসুস্থ হইলো, আমার মেয়েটার আবার সিজার করতে হইলো, আবার মেয়ের অ্যাপেন্ডিসাইট হইলো, হয়ে দিনা ধরে বাইরে গেলাম, তাইতে বাড়িটা নষ্ট করে ফেলেছি।
Many of the microcredit banks or organizations take their inspiration from Grameen Bank. In Washington, we meet a great admirer of Mohammed Yunus.
13 years ago, I started a foundation called Grameen Foundation that was meant to help support organizations that were trying to apply the Grameen principles and the Grameen strategy in other countries, because most of the world's poverty is outside of Bangladesh, in places like India, Nigeria, Indonesia, Pakistan. And so I wanted to help people who were trying to apply what I'd seen work so well in Bangladesh in other contexts.
Having access to credit has proven to be powerful. People think about finance all the time, need finance, want finance, and microcredit gives it to them.
In London, however, an expert in microfinance describes how microcredit banks use the stories of their accomplishments.
The microfinance institutions publicise the tiny number of successes, but what they don't tell us is the much, much larger number of failures. We don't tend to see the bad side of the story, we only get to see the small, the successful side of the story.
Grameen Bank's headquarters in Dhaka is a material proof of its success. The building is one of the tallest in the capital, and the Western world has contributed enormously to this success.
There were a lot of grants that were coming in directly, so I started to see that there were various places where subsidies were coming in, and so over time, in this period that I was looking at in the early 90s and mid-90s, there was about $175 million worth of subsidy that was coming in.
And Norway has been one of the most generous contributors. Almost $70 million of taxpayers' money has been donated from the aid agency NORAD to the Nobel laureate's Grameen Bank.
From the Nobel Committee's point of view, it was fighting poverty that was a major thing for us. It was empowerment of women, which was also important. And it was thirdly also a reach out for dialogue with the Muslim world.
In Mexico, microcredit is also very common. And across the globe, more than 100 million poor people now have microloans. By virtue of their poverty, they are excluded from normal banks and credits. In Mexico, most loans must be repaid quickly. So to start and run a small business with profit can be hard.
Te dan el préstamo a cambio de que les digas que vas a hacer algún negocio. Entonces yo tenía la idea de tener pollos, como una granja de pollos. Pero no funcionó, porque al principio, para iniciar, sí, pero después ya no te alcanza el dinero.
Most people in the world are not entrepreneurs. Not all of us can become Bill Gates. Why do we expect that poor people are different?
Tú no es de tu entero gusto que tu mamá tenga un crédito. ¿Por qué?
Que no les beneficia en nada porque lo agarran y al próximo semana tienen que pagar.
¿Qué dice tu mamá cuando tú le dices, mamá, ¿por qué estás en esos créditos?
Pues porque dice que le ayuda en el momento, pero ya pasan una semana, 15 días y ya no sabe de dónde sacar el dinero para...
Que en la mañana Ángela, su hija, pues nos dijo que pues ella siempre le dijo que no se metiera a préstamos porque no, que muchos problemas. ¿Está usted contenta con haberle hecho caso? ¿O
Sí,
bueno?
sí, porque ella y mi hijo nunca les ha gustado eso, ni de obtener cosas en abonos, porque pues sí traen problemas.
After 35 years, not more than 5% of the poor people in the world have become clients of microfinance institutions. Because of this, microfinance promoters say, well, we have 95% left. This is our new market. We must go to these people. They are being left out. I'm arguing that perhaps it's not that they're being left out, it's that they don't want to come to the party.
Every week in Mexico, this group of women meet. The weekly payment on the debt is due.
Este es un grupo de la colmena, que le llamamos la colmena. Cada colmena está formada de varios grupos. Son cinco personas, hacemos el panal, como se le dice.
De Facebook, todas las cosas virtuales que hicieron.
Hay mucha competencia.
Y es que aquí pues hacemos un negocio, recurrimos a la colmena, de ahí pues compramos, por ejemplo, acá está una compañera, de sus recursos se dedica a vender tamales. Acá todas participan. El que no vende tortillas, vende otros productos. Tacos en la noche, tortas. Pero sí nos ha ayudado mucho.
Taking a microloan requires, in most cases, personal savings. No savings, no credit. However, as a group member, it can be a costly affair to act as a guarantor.
Solidario porque una compañera no aportó, agarró el crédito y que se va, era del Istmo, no estaba acá. Todas dimos solidarios, yo ahí tuve como 800 de solidario, más mis ahorros. Desgraciadamente quebró la caja, el ahorro ya no nos devolvieron y tuvimos que pagar de esa persona, la mamá y la hija.
Just as in Mexico, this group of women in Bangladesh meets to make the weekly payment.
And if one from the group do not pay, what happens then?
পাঁচজন মিলে একজন গ্রুপ আছে, হয়তো মনে করেন যে ফর্ম করছে, সে লোন পাবে ওই দিন, সে কিস্তি দিতে পারতেছে না, তখন লোন আনতে গেছে, ওখান থেকে টাকা কাটে নিবে। একজনকার ঋণ আরেকজনের কিস্তি শোধ করতে হচ্ছে, এটা বুঝতেছে না। এখন আমি দরকারের জন্য টাকাটা তুলতেছি, আমার যদি লোন আনতে যায়, যদি কিস্তিটা এখানে কাটে নেয়, তাহলে তো আমি কাজে লাগাইতে পারতেছি না টাকাটা। তার মধ্যেও ঝগড়া হয়ে যায়, সদস্যের সাথে ঝগড়া হয়ে যায়।
How do you like Grameen?
কোনোটাই না, ভালো কোনোটাই না। গ্রামীণ অন্য এনজিও থেকে আলাদা ভালো না। গ্রামীণ ব্যাংক বেশি চাপ দিচ্ছে। লোন যেটা নিচ্ছি আমাদের মানে সুদের হার বেশি যাচ্ছে, আবার ফির সঞ্চয় নিচ্ছে, সঞ্চয় না নিলে কিস্তি নিচ্ছে না, আবার ফির টাকা যখন আনতে যাচ্ছি তখন আবার বীমা নিচ্ছে, অনেক কিছু প্রবলেম দেখা যাচ্ছে তখন। এই জন্য আমরা ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয়ে যাচ্ছি বেশি।
Enthusiasm for these microloans is not very high amongst the organizations working to strengthen women's rights in Bangladesh.
They use a group as the collateral. So one member of a group's default is the entire default of all the members of that group. That means that group, everybody will lose all their savings.
Most loans must be repaid in less than a year, and the installments usually start the week after they receive their loan.
এগুলো এই জমি জমা এগুলো নিতে গেছি নেওয়ার পরে যখন দেখছি আয় টাকা আসে নাই বাড়িতে তখন মানে একটার পর একটা বাড়ি গেছে এইভাবে উঠাই এইটাতে ওটা নিয়ে ওইখানে দিছি এরকমভাবে বাড়ি গেছে
এই ঘাটতি হওয়াতে তখন আরেক জায়গায় নিলাম আরেক জায়গায় নিয়ে ওখানে 20,000 নিলাম 20,000 নিতে গিয়ে ওখানে 25,000 টাকা আমাকে শোধ করতে হইলো এই যে ঘাটতিগুলো হচ্ছে ওরা ছাড়েও যাবে না দিতেই হবে এই মনে করেন বাজার করি না
To keep pace with the weekly installments, many of the women are forced to go to expensive local loan sharks.
আগে তো মানে ভালো ছিল কিন্তু এখন ঋণের ইয়ে দেখে আবার ফির ওটা আবার আরো বাড়াই দিচ্ছে মানুষ
In the end, they may end up going to the money lender, who still exists. Because my question is, if microfinance was such a positive thing, why is it that money lending exists in the villages and the rate of interest has not gone down? Here, this is this outside institution who takes your savings and controls your savings, who controls what loans they're going to give you, and insists that you start repaying from week 1. Any business, any production cannot start making repayments in 7 days.
Most people now are taking out microloans in order to repay old loans or to repay microloans to other microfinance institutions, and the poor are gradually becoming trapped in a web of microdebt.
Today, you can take a microloan for education, to build a house, or for general expenses. And there are plenty of poor people. In Bangladesh, more than 80% of the population lives on less than $2 a day. That's around 120 million people.
What microfinance is trying to do with very little subsidy from the philanthropic sector is trying to provide a service on a commercial basis, on a business basis, to give them a better deal. And I think most MFIs succeed. In fact, if they weren't succeeding, people wouldn't borrow from them. So that's the best evidence that we have.
The market for microcredit in Bangladesh is enormous. Well over 1,000 microbanks and organizations are currently offering microloans. And there is a lot of money to be earned, says an editor-in-chief who has been following the development of microloans in Bangladesh.
In a commercial bank, for example, if you take loan in Bangladesh, you have to pay 12 to 13% interest. And if you take a microcredit, you have to pay back, it ranges from 40% to, and in cases, 125%. So microcredit is a big business.
One of the world's largest NGOs working to fight poverty has chosen not to offer microcredit to the poor.
You go to Dhaka city, you go to any other big cities, you'll find buildings, beautiful buildings, hundreds of thousands of people working for these organizations. This is not a question of right or wrong. Definitely this microfinance can give you a lot of return. But our question is, who should be benefiting from return? Is it the poor people or the organizations who are practicing microfinance?
In 2007, a group of economists in Bangladesh undertook a detailed study of the many proclaimed success stories. The study covered some 2,500 people who had taken microloans. More than 1/3 had loans from Grameen Bank.
And we found that most of the people have not added to their asset at all. And there have been many, maybe about 1/3 or more, whose assets in fact went down. And we also found that the health and sanitation situation is not good. There are children going to school, but they are dropping out after a while. And their food intake also has not improved very much. The reason being, they told us, that they have to pay installments every week. So the main thing that they were trying to do is to find money to pay the installment, disregarding other needs of the family, because installment has to be paid, otherwise there may be punishment awaiting them or their colleagues, the members of their groups.
The study showed that Grameen Bank's annual interest rate is between 26 and 31%. Other microcredit banks had even higher rates.
The first results when it came, I didn't believe that. I said it can't be. Because this is microcredit, it's known all over the world and it's so much praised by everybody. And then the results say that people have not done any better, than that they're remaining either where they are or going back, only few making it good.
Bangladesh is not the only country where microcredit has become a profitable business. One of Grameen Foundation's partners is the African microloan bank LAPO in Nigeria. According to the New York Times, the annual interest rate charged by LAPO is more than 100%.
In Nigeria, for example, a organization we work with, LAPO, has been criticized. As it happens, many Nigerian banks that operate in the rural areas charge twice as much. Rural banks charge twice as much as LAPO. So LAPO is a bargain for them, even though it seems high for people seeing it from the outside.
At the University of Cambridge, an economic expert has analyzed the facts and figures.
They'll never get out of poverty because when you have to pay 30, 40, 50, sometimes 100% interest rate, what business makes that kind of profit?
Back in Bangladesh, we interviewed numerous families and got detailed information on how the microloan banks operates in the field.
Can you read and write?
No.
So you don't know what was in the document?
সেগুলোর জন্য কোনো জায়গায় স্বাক্ষর করতে হয়েছে?
হ্যাঁ, মেলায় জায়গায় স্বাক্ষর করতে হয়েছে।
আপনি পড়ালেখা জানেন?
না, স্বাক্ষরটা জানি আর কি, কোনো রকম নিজের নামটা লিখতে পারি।
Can you read or write, madam?
না, আমি পড়াশোনা করি নাই, খালি এমনি মোটামুটি একটু না, খালি সইটা জানি।
So how do you know what's in the documents?
তা আমি তো জানি না, ওইভাবে আমি খালি লোন নিবে যাই, কি পড়িবা অত পারি না, তো ওই যা করি বুঝাই দে তাই করি আমি লোন দেই, এই সই দিই আর টাকা নিয়ে আসি।
We also meet Hasira. She is struggling with a 30% annual interest rate on her loan from Grameen Bank.
15 বছর প্রথম ঢুকেছি, ঢুকে লোন দিছে, লোন নিয়ে কিস্তি চালাইছি, চালাতে কিস্তি দেয়া পারি না, সখন হয়তো আসে হইঝড় করে, টিন নামে নিয়ে যায়, টিন নাম্বার চাই, অনেক কিছু ভয় দেখায়, গ্রামীণ ব্যাংক লোন কিস্তি দিবেন না, তোমাকে ধরে নিয়ে যাবো, ওইটা করবো, মেলা কিছু কয়। সখন আমি ভয়েতে যাই, জিনিস সমস্ত বেঁচে খেছে দিই, এমন।
They go to their houses, collect whatever small little things, including their tin sheds, take that as their pawn or collateral so that they're forced to pay back. It's such a sad reality, but it exists, and it exists to an extent which you can find out quite frequently in this country.
দেখেন আমার সব, আমার দুনিয়াত কেউ নেই। এই বৃষ্টি আছে, এখন টাকা থাকলে টিন কিনে ঘরটা দিলে ঘরটা বাঁচে, টাকা তো নেই।
Back in Hillary Village, Kartik and his family also have loans at Grameen Bank. The daily production of small bamboo-made tools is the main income for the little family. But often it's not enough to cover the weekly installments.
মেয়েরা সবাই এসে কেউ মারতে যায়, কেউ টাকা দাও, কিস্তি চালাতে পারে না, তোমার লোন দেওয়া হবে না, এইসব লোন দেওয়া হয় না। কি করবো তখন মানুষের কাছ থেকে হাওলাত করে বেড়াতে হয় যে কিছু টাকা দেন আমার, আমি কিস্তি চালাতে পারছি না, আবার পরে দিয়ে দেবো না, কিছু টাকা দেন, এইভাবে করি।
এইরকম সমস্যা যখন হয় তখন আপনার মনে রাগ খুব তৈরি হয় না?
রাগ করে কি করবো?
Since its humble beginnings in the 1970s, Grameen Bank has become one of the world's largest microloan banks. And with some 8.5 million Grameen Bank customers, the potential for new business is not lacking. The bank has also established a number of companies, including joint ventures with large multinationals.
We created a lot of those companies. Particularly now we have done it with the multinational companies like BASF in Germany. We have a Grameen BASF company. Also we do that joint venture with Adidas.
More than 50 Grameen companies are offering everything from textiles, water and yogurt production to health services, insurance, solar energy and cell phone services.
Grameen Bank has certainly expanded and it now has 7 or 8 million clients. And these clients can be used for all sorts of other activities.
Grameen Bank continues to grow, continues to work both the credit and savings side, and continues to innovate to contribute the most it possibly can to reducing and one day eliminating poverty in Bangladesh.
The cell phone company Grameen Phone has proved to be a gold mine. The main shareholder is the state-controlled Telenor from Norway. In just 8 years, Telenor has nearly earned $60 million of profit. In 1996, Yunus established a new company controlled by himself and named Grameen Kalyan because Mohammed Yunus had a problem. Grameen Bank's tax exemption ended in 1998. It is evident from a variety of documents we managed to obtain. Never before published, many of the documents are written by Mohammed Yunus. We can reveal that Yunus discreetly transferred more than $100 million from Grameen Bank to the new company Grameen Kalyan. The transfer took place in December 1996. Around $100 million, of which most came from Norway and other international donors such as Sweden, Germany and Canada, were returned after the transfer to Grameen Bank as a loan. In that way, the Poor People's Bank avoided paying tax. However, in February 1998, the Norwegian embassy in Bangladesh rings the alarm bell. By chance, an employee discovered that more than $100 million had been transferred. The embassy had not even heard of the new company, Grameen Kalyan. The Norwegian state aid corporation, NORAD, reacts harshly that the funds are missing from the Grameen Bank in order to avoid future taxation, as Mohammed Yunus writes. With gradual higher interest rate charged, more and more money will have to be paid out as taxes in future. Both the aid agency NORAD and the Norwegian embassy in Dhaka demanded that Yunus paid back all the money to Grameen Bank. However, and in spite of massive pressure from the Norwegian authorities, only around 30 of the $100 million was returned. In a personal letter to the then director of NORAD, Mohammed Yunus warns about the consequences should the matter go public. Dear Tove, I need your help. If the people within and outside government who are not supportive of Grameen get hold of this letter, we'll face real problems in Bangladesh. And NORAD kept their mouths shut. They stamped all the documents confidential. The case should be resolved as soon as possible so that it would not be known. We have repeatedly tried to get a comment from those responsible for NORAD's leadership in 1998, but just 2 hours before a scheduled interview, it's been cancelled.
Vi havde en aftale I dag kl. 14.
We also tried to get interviews with the present leadership of NORAD, but nobody wanted to take part in this documentary. After the documents were released, the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs published a report concluding that the donor money from Norway in no way was used for unintended purposes. As said, only less than a third of the $100 million were transferred back to Grameen Bank. What happened to the remaining donor money? One can only guess. The official report from Norway does not give any substantial answer. For decades, microcredit has been seen as an effective tool to lift poor people out of poverty, and the Western world has donated enormous amounts of money for the cause.
I mean, people with this goodwill to help developing countries, especially in Scandinavia, have been kind of, I'm sorry to use this word, but duped into believing that this is the ideal solution for poverty.
In Washington, we meet a development researcher who, for years, has been explaining that microcredit banks only focus on their own success stories.
I think Westerners have been lured and misled by the storytelling. On the other hand, it's also partly our fault. Okay, the reason that the microfinance promoters keep telling the stories is that they work, right? We decide who to give money to based on who tells the best story that makes us feel good about where our money is going. We usually don't give our money to the people who have the best scientific evidence that it actually works.
If you take a microloan, in most cases, you do not need any collateral. That's how the idea is being sold to us. But group pressure and failed investments in small businesses could have serious consequences for the poor. We went to the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. Here the microcredit market almost exploded in recent years. And just as in Mexico and Bangladesh, the loan takers in India face hard times.
నా పేరు పూల నా వయసు 24 సంవత్సరాలు ఉంటాయి మాది పేగడపల్లి గ్రామం గొడవలు చేసి బింద బకిట కొబ్బరి అవన్నీ తీసుకెళ్లారు సార్ మా ఆయన ఏడ్చుకుంటా కూడా దండం పెట్టినాం సార్ వినలేదు సార్ మేము మా ఆయన దండం పెట్టినాం సార్ ఏడ్చినాం సార్ అయినా కూడా వాళ్ళు వినకుండా తీసుకెళ్లారు సార్ బాగా తిట్టారు సార్ బాగా తిట్టి ఎందుకు బతుకుతాను అట్లా ఇట్లా అని సార్లు తిట్టారు ఈ మాతో సభ్యులు కూడా తిట్టారు సార్ మమ్మల్ని తిట్టేసరికి ఆ బాధ ఆపుకోలేక దూరంగా పోయి చనిపోయారు సార్ మందాయి చనిపోయాను సార్ చాలా బాధాకరంగా ఉంది సార్ మా పిల్లలను నేను బతకాలని చాలా కష్టంగా ఉంది సార్ ఆయన లేని జీవితం వ్యర్థమని తెలిసి సార్
And Poola's husband is not the only one who took his life. Currently, a string of suicides are being investigated by the authorities in Andhra Pradesh.
The MFI sometimes also MFI employees come and comment on the defaulting members. Say why you are not paying this amount. If you are unable to pay, you die. And if you die, we will get the recovery from the insurance company like that. There are instances where such comments are made, and even the joint liability group members also pressurize the women members, the borrowers, to sell away the belongings, small jewelry, small items, valuable things, and that is how the borrowed members, they lost the self-respect and the humiliation, they are subjected to humiliation, and leading towards the family quarrel, and ultimately they are succumbing to deaths.
The state has passed emergency measures banning loan collectors from making house calls. But that didn't help Rama, the mother of a 20-year-old girl.
ఇంతే ఆగమాగమాడు ఈ మిషన్ కుట్టే మిషన్ మా అమ్మాయికి మిషన్ కుట్టేది సార్ ఈ చదువుకుంటా మిషన్ కుట్టేది వర్క్ లంగాల వర్క్ చేసేది ఆ లంగాల వర్క్ చేసుకునే గడ్డ ఒక ఆమె వచ్చి తీసుకుపోయింది సార్ తీసుకపోవట్లా ఈ ఏంది ఇంటి ముంగడికి వచ్చి ఇంతమంది తిట్టుడు ఇన్ని గలీజ్ మాటలు అనుడు ఎవరి దగ్గరైనా పొయ్యి అయినా కట్టాలనుడు ఎందుకు ఇదంతా అన్నట్టుగా అమ్మాయి చాలా మనసులో పెట్టుకొని వచ్చే వరకు ఎట్లా కడతామని మేము ఇద్దరం గొడవ పెట్టుకుంటా అంటే ఆమె మనసుకి ఏమనుకున్నదో సార్ మేము ఇతర గొడవ పెట్టుకుంటానో ఆమె పోయి కిరోసిన్ గ్యాస్లో పోసుకున్నది సార్. పోసుకొని అంటి పెట్టుకొని ఎంబడే పోయి గొల్లెం పెడితే మేము ఎంబడే ఉరికినాం సార్. ఉరికిన తలుపులు తీయమంటే ఎంత తీయలేదు సార్ అసలు. అంటి పెట్టుకొని గొల్లెం తీసి బయటకు వచ్చింది సార్. బయటకు వచ్చి అంతేలా అది వాళ్ళందరూ వాడపక్క వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా ఈయన సుత అయ్యో అని పోతే ఈ చేతులు కాలినాయి సార్. ఆయన సుత చేతులు ముఖం ఆయన సుత కాలి ఇద్దరిని గాంధీ దవాఖానలో తీసుకుపోయారు సార్. తీసుకుపోయి ఆయన ట్రీట్మెంట్తో ఒక 10-12 రోజులు ఆయన ఉన్నాడు. ఈయన 3 రోజుల వరకు ఈమె
Whether we go to India, Mexico, or Bangladesh, people tell the same story.
কেমন লাগে আপনার মনের অবস্থা কি দাঁড়ায় এখন কি মনে হয়?
মনে হয় যে গাড়ির তলে মাথা দিয়ে মরি এরকম অবস্থা। কিস্তি চালাতে দিতে পারছি না, সবাই এসে চাপ দিচ্ছে, তখন তো আমার সমস্যা হয়ে যায়।
ওগুলো দিয়েও চলতেছে, কেউ তো পালাইছে 4-5 জন। ওই যে মুচিপাড়াতে ওর লোনের কারণেই 2 জন 3 জন 4 জন পালাই গেছে।
আসছেন কেন? কাজের উদ্দেশ্যে, কাজ করার জন্য। কিস্তির চাপে ঢাকায় চলে আসছেন?
হ্যাঁ, কিস্তির চাপেই তো আমরা ঢাকায়। মানে কিস্তি না দিলে সোজা কথা তোমার যা থাকে বেশি কিনা দিতে হবে, পরিশোধ করতে হবে। না দিলে সোজা কথা কিস্তি ছাড়া তারা মানে বাড়িতে যাবে না।
কোন কোন জায়গায় কিস্তি আছে?
গ্রামীণ ব্যাংকে।
আর আপনার? ভাঙ্গামারা। এখন কি দিতে পারতেছেন কিস্তি ঠিকঠাক মতো?
ঠিক মতো দিতে পারি না, তবু কারোবার করে অনুরোধ করি, তবু কিন্তু মানে না।
না দিতে পারলে কি চাপ দেয়?
হ্যাঁ, চাপ
অবশ্যই।
চাপ দেয় না মানে বাড়িঘর বেঁচে নেয়, বাড়িঘর বেঁচে নেয়, এল্লা সরে না। যতক্ষণ কিস্তি না দেবে সারা রাত বসে
বসে থাকবো, টাকা নিয়ে বাসায় থেকে উঠবো, না হলে উঠবো না। টাকা দাও তারপর যাবো আমরা। এখন যেভাবে হোক আর ধার টার করিয়া তারপরে দিই।
খান না, আপনি খান মান না খান, আপনি কিস্তি দিতে হবে।
না খাওয়া পান্ন দিতে হবে কিস্তি।
আপনার কতদিন ঢাকায় থাকবেন? কত
ঢাকায় যতদিন আমার ঋণ টিন শোধ না হবে এতদিন আমার ঢাকা থাকতে হবে।
এভাবে কাজ করে শোধ করতে পারবেন মনে হয়?
এখন আশা করি আল্লাহ কাছে, আল্লাহ যদি শরীর ভালোকে পিন্ডা ভালো রাখে তাহলে পারবো, আর যদি পিন্ডা ভালো না আগে শরীর ভালো না রাখে তাহলে তো আমার পারবো।
Microfinance as an industry wants everyone to continue to believe that it's important and useful and therefore deserves subsidy and the generous support of the public. The public isn't interested in hearing the details of this thing. They want to see the smiling face, and that's why the smiling face will continue to be there. We don't bother doing evaluations of these things because we don't really want to see that we wasted our money. If you ask them what they really want, they want a stable economy, they want an opportunity to get a job, they want security. They don't want to go out in the hot sun and sell a bag of rice standing next to 20 other people selling the same bag of rice and making pennies a day.
Microloans gave Mohammed Yunus world fame and an international business conglomerate of more than 50 companies.
He's been of enormous service to the privileged and the powerful business and economic elites in Western countries. What exactly he's added to the livelihoods of the poor is another issue.
35 years into the microfinance movement, we don't have any clear evidence that microcredit, microfinance more generally, reduces poverty on average. Certainly there are some people who have used a loan and started that business and made their lives better, putting their kids through school and so on. But then there are also people who have gotten in trouble.
There have been few women who've been able to do that. There may be more, people may argue back with me and say, no, it's not a few, maybe it is 1,000 women. Maybe it is 5,000 women. So what? What is our population?
In the 25 years that I've been examining this phenomenon, that I have been talking to borrowers in marketplaces and under trees in Africa and in 25 countries around the world, and I've spoken to thousands, literally thousands of borrowers, it was clear to me that this was not having any effect on poverty.
We're getting increasing anecdotal evidence, stories of families that are getting into trouble, of families that are taking on too much debt, of families that are starting to sink as they get more capital and are not able to handle it effectively.
People have this notion that, it can transform not only individuals' lives by allowing them to become one-person entrepreneurs, but it also transforms the whole economy and makes countries develop. Neither of these things have happened.
I would strongly disagree with the concept that there isn't academic proof, research proof of the effectiveness of microfinance. In fact, 5 years ago, Grameen Foundation came out with an article, a paper really, summarizing more than 90 academic studies that have been done on microfinance, showing sustained impact of most of the MFIs on poverty and other human development indicators.
For months, we have tried to get an interview with Mohammed Yunus in order to get some answers to the many critical points raised in this program. We finally tracked Mohammed Yunus to a business fair in Valencia, in Spain, where he is receiving yet another award.
I've sent him the question 6 weeks ago, and I've kept on doing this week after week after week. Also to Lamia.
Send it to me, and I will take care. We arrange, and then we send it on the right spot. Just he doesn't want to do it today. Let's see a good time.
When will I get that?
We have repeatedly forwarded our questions and put forward the criticisms of Grameen Bank. But neither Grameen Bank nor Mohammed Yunus wants to participate in this program. However, in a brief email, Grameen Bank explains that they were not trying to avoid taxation in the case of the transfer of the $100 million. A fact that totally contradicts what Mohammed Yunus personally wrote in several letters. In the email from August 2010, Grameen Bank also says they have never been liable for taxation in Bangladesh. But 4 months later, Mohammed Yunus stated that all the money had been transferred back and that the transfer was done out of tax reasons. After the many secret documents were released in the press, Grameen Bank has issued a statement where they claim that some of these newspaper articles are false and fabricated. In December 2007, we met Jahanara, a woman who recently sold her house to pay her debts.
এটাও আমার বাড়ি আবার এটাও আমার বাড়ি আমি দুইটাই বিক্রি করছি
লোন নিছেন কোথা থেকে
লোন আমি পল্লীমঙ্গল থেকে ফার্স্টে পল্লীমঙ্গল থেকে নিছি, তা পল্লীমঙ্গলের থেকে নেওয়ার পরে গ্রামীণের থেকে নিছি, তারপরে বেরাকের থেকে নিছি আর প্রশিক্ষার থেকে নিছি। গ্রামীণের থেকে 7,000 টাকা করে দিছি।
কতদিন আগে
নিছি পরে বছর হয়েছিল।
এখন কি অবস্থা?
এখন অবস্থা কি, এখন একটু মানে এতদিন তো সবাই লোকজনে আমার হামলা করছে, আমার থেকে টাকা পয়সা নেওয়ার জন্য রাতের দিনের সমানে আসছে। এখন দেখতেছে তারাও বিরক্ত হয়ে গেছে, তারাও মানে অসহ্য হয়ে গেছে, এখন দিতে পারতেছি না। বুঝতেছে যে আমার ঘরের যা যা ছিল সব আমি বিক্রি করে ফেলাইছি, বিক্রি করে আমার ঋণ শোধ হইতেছে না।
We are now trapped in that development model, and it's going to be very difficult for us to accept that we've made a mistake the last 30 years and move on to a model where we give people sufficient resources to actually set up some sort of income-generating activity, a business, to get themselves out of poverty, rather than give them a tiny amount of money which basically just gets them into further debt.
More than 2 years after we first met Jahanara, we go back.
আমি নিয়ে কষ্টে থাকছি, কষ্ট খাইছি, একটা বিপদে পড়ে গেছি, ভালো মন্দ খাওয়াইতে পারি নাই, বা আমরাও খাইতে পারি নাই, বা একবেলা খাইছি আর একবেলা খাই নাই। এছাড়া আমি দিতে পারবো না, কেন আমার তো জায়গা নাই, সম্পত্তি নাই যে আমি বিক্রি করে দিয়ে দিব। এখন দেন না কি অবস্থা থাকি, বস্তির মতন থাকি। আমার বাড়িঘর ছিল কেমন, আছে কেমন, কষ্ট করুন দিকে, কষ্টের লেগে বাপে এই যে বাড়িঘর দিয়ে গেছিল। দুনিয়া তো এতিম, এতিমের দিকে কে তাকাইবো, কে দেখবো আল্লাহ ছাড়া।
We also return to a little village in the northern part of Bangladesh. Here we meet Razia and her daughter. Razia also has loans with Grameen Bank. She wanted to give her daughter an education.
আমি তো দিতে পারছি না 500 টাকা পুরা, কোথা থেকে দিব? এর আগে ছিল যেগুলা, এর আগে আমি বেশি এনজিওতে ছিলাম।
So, you just told me that you had to sell your house. Can you show me your house?
আপনি কি ওই যে বাড়িটা আগে ছিল আপনার, ওই বাড়িটা ওনাকে দেখা দিতে পারবেন?
হ্যাঁ পারবো।
Let's go.
চলো।
So, Razia, for how long time did you have that house you had to sell?
15 বছর।
15 years.
15 years. You built it yourself, your family?
নিজেরাই তৈরি করছিলেন?
হ্যাঁ নিজেরাই তৈরি করছিলাম, জায়গা কিনে নিজেরাই তৈরি করছিলাম। এটা আমার পুরনো বাড়ি। আমি বললাম তাহলে নিচ্ছেন কি জন্য?
If you think back, do you sometimes feel that you should never have taken the very first loan?
হ্যাঁ, আর লোন না নিলে তো আমার বাড়ি বিক্রি করতে হতো না। আমি তো লোনের টাকা নিয়ে বাড়ি করি নাই।
And now it has become a never-ending story to you and your family.
এখন তো মনে হচ্ছে যে এটা আর কখনোই শেষ হবে না।
না,
লোন আর কখনো লোন থেকে বের হতে পারবেন না।
এই তো আছি, কই বের হতে পারছি না তো, চেষ্টা তো করতেছি বের হওয়ার জন্য, কিন্তু পারছি না তো। তখন না পারি, কিস্তিতে বাইরেও হইতে পারি না, কিস্তি চালাইতেও পারি না, বাধ্য হয়ে বাড়ি বিক্রি করতে হচ্ছে আমার। এনজিওরা তো মানতেছে না, তারা তো আসি হুমকি দেখাচ্ছে, বাসায় আসি বসে থাকেছে, কি মাল বিক্রি করবেন করেন, নাহলে 3 দেন। 3 বিক্রি করে শুধু চালাইছি আমি।
Grameen has given me an unshakable faith in the creativity of human beings. This has led me to believe that human beings are not born to suffer the misery of hunger and poverty. I firmly believe that we can create a poverty-free world if we collectively believe in it.
Muhammad Yunus said that credit is a human right, but he never said that debt is a human right. But the other side of credit is debt. Every time you take a credit, you are in debt. Poor people don't like debt any more than you and I do.
In a poverty-free world, the only place you would be able to see poverty is in the poverty museums.
Poverty is a matter of time. You're not going to solve the problems of the poorest countries in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, 40 years.
There's no real business development potential. There's no real escape from poverty. That's the end of the story.
It looks extremely sexy and nice to have this one woman story from rags to riches, but it's also a cause for a lot of exploitation.
The way we are operating microfinance across the globe, it is not sustainable. It is really banking on the only hard-earned money on the poorest of the poor. It is only throwing poor people into further poverty.
We need to take more time and do better homework and do more research. Until we begin to do that, we won't come up with more interesting and creative solutions to some of these problems.